Let's talk today about using short rows in a way other than socks. We're all familiar with them for sock heels, but we can make this shape of dress with them also. These will be the straight rows, but the addition of short rows in this area will create the flare. Here it is represented how we'll actually do it. We'll cast on along here and we'll knit a few straight rows. In my particular situation, I'm knitting 8. And then we'll knit 2 short rows that only cover a few needles, in my case 10, pegs I said needles, and we'll knit 2 short rows that only cover 20 pegs, and then we'll repeat doing 8 straight rows, 2 short rows, 2 fairly short rows, and it will create the shape that you see here. Then where the dotted lines are, we'll sew that together, and that'll be the center back of the dress. In many cases, you actually need to leave the upper part open and put hooks and eyes on it because you want to be able to slip the doll into the dress. This actually works for human-sized skirts, especially for little people too. Here you can see my knitting in progress, and you can see that it's getting long faster here than it is over here. And this will be the edge that's the top of the dress. This will be the hem. So let's do a little bit of knitting. First of all, I'm slipping the first stitch to make a neat edge. In this case, slipping it just means don't knit it, don't wrap it, don't do anything with it. I'm purling stitches 2 and 4. And to do that, I'm using my knit and purl tool. I'm using here the F2 Kiss, which, by the way, this tool does a super duper job on this. This one is going to be a normal row, so I'm going to wrap all the way to the other end with normal Kiss U stitches. And at the other end, which is the edge that crosses the doll's chest, basically the neckline, I'm also going to purl stitches 2 and 4 from that edge. So we'll do that together. Then I can go back and knit over the U-wraps. Here we are at stitch 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Purl it with the knit and purl tool. This tool is a very nice fit on this loom. I've used it on all kinds of looms. It works great on many things. It works especially well on this. Purl. And then we do knit the last stitch going this direction. Now, I will knit over. Oops, what have I got going on? I caught the back of the stitch, sorry. I'll knit these over, and I will do 7 more rows like this one, and I'll meet you back here when I am ready to begin a short row. I've done my straight rows, and I'm ready for my 10-stitch short rows. Even though I'm slipping this stitch, it counts as one of the 10. So that's 1, purling stitch 2. Sorry that I seem clumsy. I am working from behind the camera, and it makes me less graceful than I wish I were. I just wrapped stitch 3, and I'll go back and knit it over because I wanted to go ahead and purl stitch 4. And there we are, knitting over stitch 3. Now the rest of the 10, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, they're all normal knit stitches. So let's knit them over. Sometimes people ask me, why can I not insert one short row? And it's pretty obvious when you watch me do it why. I go into the fabric this way, to knit 1, I have to knit back, otherwise it's not a short row. So they come in multiples of 2. Here's an important step. I must wrap stitch 11 after knitting the last actual stitch in this short row and not knit it over. Next trip by, 2 loops will go over at once. They'll both be knitted over. The reason for this is that if I don't do so, there will be a little hole in the fabric. That isn't always bad. Sometimes I use those on purpose to run a ribbon through or something. But you will get a hole, so if you're not wanting one there, the wrap gets rid of it. And we knit the last stitch. Let me go back and knit these over. The reason that I'm doing 2 10-stitch short rows and 2 20-stitch short rows is to make the flare more gradual. If I wanted it dramatic, let me draw real quick. I want a gradual flare like this. But I could get the same amount of flare with the same amount of rows by, it would be a sharper point here. If these are my straight rows and I just knitted all 20-stitch rows, it wouldn't be gradual. There would almost seem to be a little gathering here because there'd be 4 extra rows meeting here every time I short rowed. I hope that made a little bit of sense. Oh, I haven't finished knitting over. There's a stitch that almost got away. Now we're going to do the 20-stitch row, slipping the first stitch, purling the second, knitting the third, and I'll wrap it and knit it in a second. If you're wondering why my yarn is a little bit curly, it's because I recycled it. This was a sock that didn't work out quite the way I wanted it, so I unraveled it. Now, technically speaking, there are a number of things you can do to get rid of this curliness before you reknit it, but this is such a small project, I think I can get by with it. Let me see where I am. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Here's a little trick I do. I'll go ahead and knit stitch 20, wrap stitch 21 before I forget, come back and knit stitch 20 beginning the trip back for the second of the 20-stitch short rows. And now go ahead and knit these over. That way I don't forget to do my wrap and everything's locked into place so I can knit these over in a leisurely manner. And when we're done with this, we'll wrap this row all the way back to the left, and then we'll resume knitting straight rows until it's time to do the next short row segment. The effect of these short rows is to create a wedge of fabric that appears on the left in this case, because that's where I'm adding it, but not on the right. All right. As a reminder, we're wrapped here, and I don't need to knit that over because that's the wrap for next time. And I did forget to show you that I knitted over 2 loops at once on peg 11. It just goes so easily that I didn't even think about it. And you'll get to where you don't either. You just knit over what's there. 4th from the edge. Now, why, you may wonder, am I purling stitches 2 and 4 on each edge? But you may have already figured it out. It'll keep the bodice top edge and the hem edge from rolling. Every time we alternate knits and purls, it stops the roll that stockinette fabric otherwise has. Apparently, the reason for that is that one face of the stitch has a little bit more yarn in it than the other face because a knit stitch is symmetrical left to right, but not front to back. Therefore, it'll pull towards the side that has the least yarn involved. But if we alternate knits and purls, then the pulls fight each other, and we don't have any problem. Again, this is not one to knit over, that's my wrap. And now I'll go back to knitting straight rows. This pattern is designed for Lammily dolls. These are 11-inch fashion dolls that are shaped more like a typical young woman than most dolls. The bust is the critical area on this dress, and Lammily's bust is 5 3/4 inches. Keep this in mind if you want to knit the dress for another doll. I have a link on my website that will take you to Lammily, where you can read more about it and obtain dolls. Cast on 35 stitches to begin with, using any cast on that is neat. Knit 4 plain rows, remembering that we always purl the stitches number 2 and number 4 at each end of the work. You do not purl stitches at the interior end of short rows, but you do purl those at the beginning end, the edge end of a short row. All other stitches are knitted every row. Work a short row sequence of 2 10-stitch short rows and then 2 20-stitch short rows after those first 4 plain rows. Do that as I showed you in the demo. Then in the next segment, we're going to do something that we repeat 5 times. Knit 8 full rows, then a short row sequence. So do that 5 times and finish the dress with 4 full rows, full-length rows, and bind off using any neat bind off. Sew the beginning and the end of the work together just behind the bind off, sewing from the wide end, which is the hem of the skirt, to just below the waist. The waist is where the 20-row short row ends, and you'll see the flare begin. Sew hooks to the underside of one side of the center back from the waist up, and eyes on the back of the dress to the other side. Overlap the top of the dress to fasten it. Those hooks and eyes will connect. It's best to fit the dress on the doll to determine the ideal overlap because you've got a little fitting option built in right there. Crochet a 15-inch chain for a belt. And that's it.